Top of the day, beautiful people. Top of the day. That's wobble. That's wobble. Sawubona. Sawubona. All right. Kajabi. What's that? All right. Beautiful people. I'm sorry. Okay. I'll pull this together here. Isaiah, you gotta move this. I'm trying to do this and you put all your stuff up here. Okay, we got it. Yes.
My mouse has a little space to move it.
Mouse, I'm sorry. I'll move that in a second. All right, beautiful people. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. It is August the 8th, 2020. Day 220. I got it. I just put it right here. Thank you very much, son. Day 220. Today we are reading Daniel chapter 5, 6, and 7. Who about to see some ghost fingers, y'all? Okay. So all y'all know the chapters we're about to read if you're familiar with the book of Daniel. All right, so let's get started here. Daniel chapter 5. Many years later, King Belshazzar gave a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, and he drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking the wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver cups that his predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. He wanted to drink from them with his nobles, his wives, and his concubines. So they brought these gold cups taken from the temple, the house of Yahuwah in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. While they drank from them, they praised their idols made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly, they saw fingers of a human hand writing on the plaster wall of the king's palace near the lampstand. The king himself saw the hand as it wrote, and his face turned pale with fright. His knees knocked together in fear, and his legs gave way beneath him. The king shouted for the enchanters, astrologers, and fortune tellers to be brought in before him. He said to these wise men of Babylon, "Whoever can read this writing and tell me what it means will be dressed in purple robes of royal honor and will have a gold chain placed around his neck. He will become the third highest ruler in the kingdom." But when all the king's wise men had come in, none of them could read the writing or tell him what it meant. So the king grew even more alarmed, and his face turned pale. His nobles, too, were shaken. But when the queen mother heard what was happening, she hurried to the banquet hall. She said to Belshazzar, "Long live the king. Don't be so pale and frightened. There is a man in your kingdom who has within him the spirit of the holy gods." During Nebuchadnezzar's reign, this man was found to have insight, understanding, and wisdom like that of the gods. Your predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar, made him chief over all the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and fortune tellers of Babylon. This man Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar, has exceptional ability and is filled with divine knowledge and understanding. He can interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means. So Daniel was brought before the king. The king asked him, "Are you, Daniel, one of the exiles brought from Judah by my predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar? I heard that you have the spirit of gods. I heard that you have the spirit of the gods within you, and that you are filled with insight, understanding, and wisdom. My wise men and enchanters have tried to read the words on the wall and tell me their meaning, but they cannot. I am told that you can give interpretations and solve difficult problems. If you can read these words and tell me their meaning, you will be clothed in purple robes of royal honor, and you will have a gold chain placed about your neck. You will become the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Daniel answered the king, "Keep your gifts or give them to someone else, but I will tell you what the writing means. Your Majesty, the Most High Yahuwah gave sovereignty, majesty, glory, and honor to your predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar. He made him so great that people of all races and nations and languages trembled before him in fear. He killed those who he wanted to kill, and he spared those who he wanted to spare. He honored those who he wanted to honor, and he disgraced those he wanted to disgrace. But when his heart and mind were puffed up with arrogance, he was brought down from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven from human society. He was given the mind of a wild animal and lived among wild donkeys. He ate grass like a cow, and he was drenched with the dew of heaven until he learned that the Most High God, Yahuwah, rules over the kingdoms of the world and appoints anyone he desires to rule over them. You are his successor, O Belshazzar, and you knew all this. Yet you have not humbled yourself, for you have proudly defied the Lord of heaven and have had these cups from his temple brought before you. You and your nobles and your wives and concubines have been drinking wine from them while praising gods of silver, gold, iron, bronze, wood, and stone, gods that neither see nor hear nor know anything at all. But you have not honored the God who gives you the breath of life and controls your destiny. So Yahuwah has sent this hand to write this message. And this is the message that was written: Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. This is what these words mean. Mene means numbered. Yahuwah has numbered the days of your reign and has brought it to an end. Tekel means weighed. You have been weighed on the balances and have not measured up. Parsin means divided. Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then, at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was dressed in purple robes. A gold chain was hung around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Babylonian king, was killed. That very night. And Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. That's another one of those time markers. Remember when Yahuwah said something's going to happen? He said it. When he gives a timeline, it always happens in that timeline. So a lot of times when you hear people using the word soon or JC is coming soon, it's like Yahuwah does not operate that way. He doesn't even talk like that. He always gives some kind of time marker. He tells you what's going to be happening during this particular time period where this will happen. That's why we're Nikki. That's why we're hey. So I just wanted to remind you of that. All right. Daniel chapter 6. Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high officer to rule over each kingdom. The king also chose Daniel and 2 others as administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interests. Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault to find in the way Daniel was handling government affairs. So they're going to be a mess again, like Trina said yesterday. Always trying to, they pissed because a slave has been placed over them in authority. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded, our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel would be in connection with the rules of his religion. So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, long live King Darius. We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a new law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except you, your majesty. See, here they go gassing up the king's head again. That's why he in trouble now. He got a bunch of liars around him in his council. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. So King Darius signed the law. Now, also, we're going to read it after we finish the book of Daniel. Remember I told you when we read the book of Daniel, we're also, because Daniel's a pretty short book, we're going to read the portions that were taken away. It's called Bel and the Dragon and Susanna, right? So I don't know why. I mean, I can see why they gave it the name. They gave Susanna the name because of who that particular story was about. But Bel and the Dragon, the title of that kind of throws people off sometimes because they're not familiar. Ooh, dragon. Oh, this is church. No, remember we was talking about getting hung up on terms yesterday? No, I think it's inappropriately named, but nevertheless, if you don't read it, you never know what's in there. So Bel and the Dragon is about Daniel showing the king that his band of people around him were liars. And so that's it. And the dragon represents the king's false god that he worshiped. And Daniel was showing him that your God is a lie, and the men around you lying to you about who this God is and what he's really doing for you, and it's really them. It's humans behind all this. Let me show you, king, what's going on. That's Bel and the Dragon. But also within those stories, it also has... it goes into more detail about Daniel being in the lion's den, because how many of y'all didn't know that Habakkuk, the prophet, was alive during Daniel's time, and he actually went to talk to Daniel while he was in the lion's den. Yahuwah translated him or teleported him there to the den with Daniel. Bruh, I didn't know that until I read it. Reading is fundamental, and it fills in gaps about what's going on here. Okay, I just wanted to throw that in. Verse 9, so King Darius signed the law. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. Then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for Yahuwah's help. So they went straight to the king and reminded him about his law. Did you not sign a law that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions? Yes, the king replied. That decision stands. It is an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. Then they told the king, that man Daniel, one of the captives from Judah, like that slave that you put over everybody, one of the captives from Judah is ignoring you and your law. Ain't that the same thing they did to Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, right? They said them 3 slaves that you put over all your provinces, our provinces, they not listening to you, king. Then they told the king, that man Daniel, one of the captives from Judah, is ignoring you and your law. He still prays to his God 3 times a day. Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled and said, Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. In the evening, the men went together to the king and said, Your Majesty, you know that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no law that the king signs can be changed. It's like, king, you're moving your feet too slow. Come on, we need to kill this dude like right now. Come on, what you doing? You deliberate. You can't go against the Medes and the Persians' law. So at last, the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to him, May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you. Like, the king loved Daniel. Like, what's crazy is the Babylonian king loved Daniel. Yahuwah had given him favor with them and placed him in high positions of authority by them personally. And even when the king of the Medes and the Persians came on the scene, he loved Daniel too. It's like, man, I need this dude here in my kingdom. I can trust him. The king said to him, May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his own royal seal and the seals of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and could not sleep at all that night. Very early the next morning, and right here, between verse 18 and 19, the missing books fill in a huge gap and tell you what happened, right? So then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and could not sleep at all that night. Very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, "Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you served so faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "Long live the king. My God, Yahuwah, sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me, for I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den. No scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his God. Then the king gave orders to arrest the men who had maliciously accused Daniel. He had them thrown into the lion's den along with their wives and children. Bruh, you done brought death on your entire household because your foolishness, your jealousy, your messiness. Then he had them thrown into the lion's den along with their wives and children. The lions leaped on them and tore them apart before they even hit the floor of the den. Then King Darius sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and he will endure forever. Here's another wicked king giving praise and homage to the one and true and living God, simply because of one of his faithful servants, right? For he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Last chapter for the day, y'all. Daniel chapter 7. Daniel's vision of 4 beasts. Earlier, during the first year of King Belshazzar's reign in Babylon, Daniel had a dream and saw visions as he lay in his bed. He wrote down the dream, and this is what he saw. In my vision that night, I, Daniel, saw a great storm churning the surface of the great sea, with winds blowing from every direction. Then 4 huge beasts came up out of the water, each different from the others. The first beast was like a lion with eagle's wings. As I watched, its wings were pulled off, and it was left standing with its 2 hind feet on the ground like a human being, and it was given a human mind. Then I saw a second beast, and it looked like a bear. It was rearing up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And I heard a voice saying to it, "Get up, devour the flesh of many people." Then the third of these strange beasts appeared, and it looked like a leopard. It had 4 birds' wings on its back, and it had 4 heads. Great authority was given to this beast. Then in my vision that night, I saw a 4th beast, terrifying, dreadful, and very strong. It devoured and crushed its victims with huge iron teeth and trampled their remains beneath its feet. It was different from any other beast, and it had 10 horns. As I was looking at the horns, suddenly another small horn appeared among them. 3 of the first horns were torn out by the roots to make room for it. This little horn had eyes like human eyes and a mouth that was boasting arrogantly. I watched as thrones were put in place, and the Ancient One sat down to judge. Who was the Ancient One? Yahuwah is the Ancient One. I watched as thrones were put in place, and the Ancient One sat down to judge. His clothing was as white as snow, his hair like purest wool. He sat on a fiery throne. with wheels of blazing fire, and a river of fire was pouring out, flowing from his presence. Millions of angels ministered to him. Many millions stood to attend him. Then the court began its session, and the books were opened. I continued to watch because I could hear the little horn's boastful speech. I kept watching until the fourth beast was killed and its body was destroyed by fire. The other three beasts had their authority taken from them, but they were allowed to live a while longer. As my vision continued that night, I saw someone like a son of man, or like a human being, coming with the clouds of heaven. That's an expression. He's not coming in heaven, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient One and was led into his presence. He was given authority, honor, and sovereignty over all the nations of the world, so that the people of every race and nation and language would obey him. His rule is eternal. It will never end. His kingdom will never be destroyed. I, Daniel, was troubled by all I had seen, and my visions terrified me. So I approached one of those standing beside the throne and asked him what it all meant. Now, mind you, this is another, Daniel is a very popular book for Bible prophecy that people take out of context, right? So a lot of time we just hear about the vision, but if you keep on reading, it gives you the interpretation of the vision. Some people, they totally skip this part when they're teaching about this, and I couldn't understand why. Either they were ignorant, they didn't read it all the way to get the interpretation of what this was, because we know when there's a dream or a vision or anything that Yah gives, he gives the interpretation of it, right? He always does. The vision is explained. Verse 15. I, Daniel, was troubled by all I had seen, and my visions terrified me. So I approached. Hey, listen, chill.
Say I in the window.
Bella, we know you in the window. Chill. So I approached one of those standing beside me. So I approached one of those standing beside the throne and asked him what it all meant. He explained it to me like this. These four huge beasts represent four kingdoms that will arise from the earth. But in the end, the holy people of the Most High will be given the kingdom, and they will rule forever and ever. And there's a big part that is also missed. Remember when it said, I saw one coming like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven? It's talking about Israel, Yahuwah's people. It tells you right here, verse 18, but in the end, this is how the dream was explained. But in the end, the holy people of the Most High will be given the kingdom, and they will rule forever and ever. If you go back up, it said the kingdom that will never end. This is the kingdom that will never end. When Yahuwah's holy people are given the kingdom, and they will rule forever and ever. Then I wanted to know the true meaning of the fourth beast, the one that was so different from the others and so terrifying. It had devoured and crushed its victim. Wait a minute, Isaiah. Boy, go somewhere. It had devoured and crushed its victims with iron teeth and bronze claws, trampling their remains beneath its feet. I also asked about the 10 horns on the fourth beast's head and the little horn that came up afterward and destroyed 3 of the other horns. This horn had seemed greater than the others, and it had human eyes and a mouth that was boasting arrogantly. As I watched, this horn was waging war against Yahuwah's holy people and were defeating them until the Ancient One, the Most High, came to judge in the favor of his holy people. Then the time arrived for the holy people to take over the kingdom. Remember, if we go back up, we see that, and I saw the Ancient of Days. He came and he sat. This is the same thing. It's explaining that in detail. What's happening is still talking about the people whom Yahuwah, the saints of the holy God, or Yahuwah's people, Israel, they take over the kingdom and they rule. They rule. It's a kingdom. I mean, there are many positions and provinces and cities and states and whatever you want to call them, however you understand it. There are many people that are set in different positions of authority to help rule, and they all rule the kingdom together forever. Then he said to me, I read 21 again. As I watched, this horn was waging war against Yahuwah's holy people and was defeating them until the Ancient One, the Most High Yahuwah, came and judged in favor of his people. Then the time arrived for the holy people to take over the kingdom. Then he said to me, this fourth beast is the fourth world power that will rule the earth. It will be different from all the others. It will devour the whole world, trampling and crushing everything in its path. Its 10 horns are 10 kings who will rule that empire. Then another king will arise, different from the other 10, who will subdue 3 of them. He will defy the Most High and oppress the holy people of Yahuwah. He will try to change their sacred festivals and laws, and they will be placed under his control for a time, times, and half a time. Then the court will pass judgment, and all his power will be taken away and completely destroyed. Haven't we seen that? Who has done that? The Catholic Church, or Rome, shall we say, has done that. They've changed the days and the time and the sacred festivals, turning us away from Yahuwah's laws to worship pagan rituals and celebrate pagan holidays and stuff. He will try to change their sacred festivals and laws, and they will be placed under his control. We have been placed under Rome's control for a time, times, and half a time. Then the court, and some people, and I used to believe this too, when it says time, times, and half a time, people think that's like, they come up with 3.5 years. They start talking about the tribulation period, but it is not true. If you would read this, if you would understand the base story and what's going on, you would know that that's not true. And in order for a kingdom to try and change their sacred festivals and laws and be placed under his control for time and a half a time, that would take way longer than 3.5 years. That's a period of time. That's many, many years, okay? But then the court will pass judgment, and all his power will be taken away and completely destroyed. Then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be given to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will last forever, and all rulers will serve and obey him. That was the end of the vision. I, Daniel, was terrified by my thoughts, and my face was pale with fear. But I kept these things to myself. And that, my beautiful people, is our reading for today. That was Daniel 5, 6, and 7. Day 220. Saturday, August the 8th, 2020. But I just said 2020 twice, right? August the 8th, 2020. Oh, no, I didn't. It's day 220. That's why. It's day 220. August the 8th, 2020. All right. Y'all get it. Let me get my whole stuff together. Hold on. All right, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and read the blessing. I'm trying to put all this stuff right here, which is found, Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us his peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, beautiful people, I love you, and I'll see you bright and early in the morning. Peace.